Start recording.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to Simon Johnson, who is going to deliver the final session for today. So thank you for waiting to the end to do this. And thank you to everyone else who's here and has stayed on for the afternoon as well. So this session is looking at what can we learn from the English about the teaching and learning of mathematics. And Simon, I'll just hand it over to you just now.
Well, good afternoon. I appear to be having the same problem now as Fiona on my slides. But I'm move on. Here they are. So first of all, who am I? So I'm a class teacher in Scotland. I'm currently at Burston Academy, and I've been working at how we help pupils connect their learning. And I wrote an article last year about how we help children connect the arithmetic and algebraic and the geometric. So I've been thinking about this for a while. Largely because of the CPA work so many of us have done over the last, well, it must be nearly a decade now since that really began to surge in Scotland. Maybe not quite. So I'm just a teacher presenting some proposal about this question, but that's not really the question. I think the question really is how can we be sector leading? How can we be world class in the teaching and learning of maths? This is just a subset of that question. And my interest was piqued by Maureen McKenna's keynote of the West Partnership, and particularly if you look at this, what this slide does. This slide is from someone else that the Scottish government did, and there's Scotland. They're doing okay in terms of PISA. I'll talk a little bit more about what the scale is on the y-axis in a minute. There's some confidence intervals around this number, but it looks like we're just about average in terms of the countries in the OECD and who are being examined in the PISA testing in the mathematics area. And England, let me find England now. I think it's this one. It looks like they're significantly doing better than us in the PISA test, in the maths part of the PISA test. So that really piqued my interest, that talk about, well, why is that, and does it matter? So I started to look at, well, should we really care about PISA? How do we compare with England? Well, how do we go about even looking at that? And lastly, I began to think, well, what action can we take as class teachers? And I thought, was that everything I wanted to say about this? Yeah, well, I mean, first there's a bit of a caveat there. It's an opinion piece. It's not an extensive piece of research. I think I've got something worth hearing, but it's just one piece of the jigsaw as we work out how to make maths education in this country world class. And for me, it's a very blurry, it's a complex picture, but it's begun to come into focus as I've talked to people about this issue. And before I talk about the people I've talked to a little bit about PISA, these are from the ScotGov highlights. So about 3,000 pupils took part. They're about 15 years old, or they are 15 years old. In England, at the same time, with slightly more pupils, but of course the number of 15-year-olds is much bigger in England. I reckon there's about 5% of our pupils were tested compared to about 2% of English 15-year-olds. And they're all, I think, that their 15-year-olds are generally in S4 and they're approaching the national fives. And in England, they're in year 11, I think, generally, and they're approaching their GCSEs in year 11. So it's a similar stage of their mathematical career. So should we care about PISA? Well, PISA is assessing mathematical literacy. I'll give you a minute to read what they mean by that. So it's this emphasis that I really like, the idea of reasoning mathematically. And I think that's fits really well with the message that we got when the Making Maths account group engage with stakeholders about our image problem in terms of mathematics, and looking to make maths more relevant and real life. And it felt similar. A lot of these ideas about understanding came across in that report, and a similar emphasis in PISA. So these are some PISA questions. So I thought we could try these. So statement 1, the number 8 to the power of 16 is 8 times larger than the number 8 to the power of 15. In the chat, statement 1, is that true or false? Statement 2, true or false? So that was the first, one of the first of these series of questions. There's lots of sample questions, and I've got a link down here to them. So Jacqueline and Iona, have we got any answers in the chat yet? Shall I give them another 30 seconds?
Yeah, I would give a wee chance. There's one answer so far.
Come on, folks. I know it's late in the day. There's 50 of you. Should be able to get, how many have we got?
We've got quite a few answers now. Can you see the chat?
I can't. So I can see the chat, can't I? Let's look at the chat.
If you click chat, you should be able to see.
True, then
coming
false.
in second fast.
True, then false. I like the people. I would have said statement 1 true, statement 2 false, but most people have just gone TF. Yeah. Well, I really like that question. I like the fact there's a wee summary of powers here, if you're not sure. But yeah, 8 to the 15 is 8 times itself 15 times. Once more, 8 to the 16. So that's true, but that's bottom statement is not. So the next one, linking with powers. So that was the first question. Where's my second question gone? Well, I've lost the second question. Don't know why it's not coming up. Can you see it for a flash? Anyway, we've lost the second question. That was linking in with the powers. And then the third question, they gave this sequence of powers of 7 and then said, what is the last digit on the number 7 to the power of 190? I've swapped these two around. The beauty of powers statement is actually on the left rather than the right. So what do you think? What's the last digit of the number 7 to the power of 190 given this series here? What do you think? Is it 1, 3, 7 or 9? Sorry, Alan. No, I was flashing across a bit there, wasn't I? It was not showing me that second one. I'm not sure why. So Michael, good, well done, Michael, for having a go. 9 question mark. Can anybody explain why they think it's 9 or 3 or 7? Gavin says it's because 188, 7 to 188 is a multiple of 4. Yeah. So yeah, that would end in a 1. The multiples of 4 end in a 1, and then it's 2 later. I think that's quite a good explanation. But the idea is there's some reasoning in there. I just want to show you that because there's some reasoning in there. Some of the other questions that are on this 2021 page as example questions of PISA. There are some, I think when you click on the chat, it then doesn't easily move to your next slide. It's hard to move between chat and slide. So I'm not going to do that again.
We'll monitor the chat, don't worry.
Yeah, I think that'd be better. So there's also some nice, always, sometimes, never true questions, always true, sometimes true, never true. I'm not going to get you to do all of those, but we know that there's been a bit of chat about how much we like those on Twitter. And then some real life context. There was some questions around smartphone use in different populations. So quite a rich set of questions. And one of the reasons Maureen McKenna says she liked these is because it's more than sums. It's getting children, I think, to think through problems and to begin to think mathematically. So after it all, while I was doing some of this research into what PISA was like, I was also thinking, well, how do Scotland and England compare? How am I even going to begin to answer this question? And it was last November, I think, when I saw Chris McGrain talk, and he was talking about the 4 fundamentals. I think he mentioned these in his recent book as well. And I thought, well, that would be a really good way to look at and compare the fundamentals of education between Scotland and England. So I thought, well, I'm going to have a go at this. I struggled to do it on my own. I thought I'm not going to be able to do this in isolation. I work best when I'm collaborating, when I'm discussing with people. So I set up some meetings with lots of people. Well, particularly these 7 people agreed to talk with me. I've spoken with Leah and Ona a couple of times, and Andrew is a colleague in my department. I've spoken to many times about this. And more recently, Fiona came and asked me about what I was saying, and given her experience in Scotland and England, I was able to discuss some of the aspects of this with Fiona as well. So I thought I'd start with assessment. So there are four of these 4 fundamentals. I thought I'd start with assessment. We know that assessment can be a driver for pedagogical change. So I thought it was worth starting here. It is important. Lots of people said to me it was broadly similar, not just the people I've interviewed. I've often heard, I think, that there's more of an emphasis on statistics in England. I didn't know if that was true. I've heard both things, both that some of the content in the GCSE, which is what I'm going to be looking at, is in our higher. But I've also heard the other way round, that some A-level, some of our National 5 content is in the A-level. And I had latterly was hearing that it required more mathematical thinking. I think recently, since the assessments have changed the last few years, it has been. Mike Alter was particularly keen to stress that he was impressed with some of the questions in the recent GCSEs. So I'm going to get you to monitor the chat again for this, Iona. So this is from one. I'd like you to try this question, folks. This is very much like something we get in Nat 5. It's perhaps a little bit trickier, but we've seen these in National 5. Work out the value of 16 over 81, all to the power of 3/4. I reckon Michael Allen's going to get this first. Not that there's a prize, Michael.
There's a good comment there from Joe as well in the chat, saying that gathering from colleagues that you've come from England, that they've got more of a focus on geometry than us earlier in the curriculum, and I think that's certainly an impression that I've got as well.
So have we got any answers to question 14A?
We've got quite a few answers of 8/27.
I think that's correct.
Michael's saying he's going to let somebody else get it because he does have it though.
Well, you're wise, Michael. That's very kind of you. Right, so I thought this question was part B, required a bit more thought. And has anybody got this one? I put this up a few seconds ago. Maybe they've not had time to do this. And the other question I was going to show you from that paper was this as well. Anybody who can get that? I'm not really concentrating. I can't remember the answer to this. I did this a week or 2 ago. I haven't got it to hand. But I do know the answer to B. Have we got any answers to B?
We've got one person, Gavin, has said 0 question mark. No, wrong. He's corrected himself. We've got Ruthie saying 1.
Do you know, I did do this one. 3 to the power of A, that would be 3 to the power of -2, would be a 9th. But, and then 3 to the power of B, B must be worth 2.5, I think. And then 1 over √3. Is that -1/2?
Yeah.
I think maybe it is 0. What do we think in the chat? I had the answer to this a day or 2 ago, but I haven't written it down, so.
We've got 1, we've got -1.
Is this for C or A?
B.
This is for B.
Oh, B. Okay.
Yeah. -2 positive 2.5, negative 0.5.
Yeah.
I just did the Photo Maths app just to check, and it's coming out 2.5.
That'll be for B.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's B is 2.5.
Yeah. I'm
Negative
happy
2,
with you.
negative 0.5. I should have got this written down. I thought I knew what the answer was. Obviously, I don't. It is 0. Right, moving swiftly on. Did you have that on record, Iona, or did you skip that bit?
No, it's recording. Don't worry.
I was just hoping it wasn't, you see. Right. Now, this next question. So that was from the higher tier paper. So this is where you can get on the higher tier paper, you can get anything from a C to an A star. So I've got these grades on here. This question, that's a lovely question, is a show that question. And it's on both tiers. So this is it's a bit like general and credit, the foundation and higher. You can't sit them both though. So you have to choose one or the other. But you can get a C grade. You can get a C grade from the foundation tier. When I was being educated in England, you might be able to tell most of my upbringing was in England, although I was born in Dundee, and it was absolutely fine for us to. I was in the O-level class back in the day, and my pals were in the CSE. A lot of my pals were in the CSE class, but they could get a C from that, but they couldn't then go on to do the A-level from that. So was that all I wanted to say about the assessment? I think just that it's nice to see some mathematical thinking required in the paper. There is some do this, factorize that in the papers, but I'm not suggesting we rush out to change the SQA National 5, because in the higher in 2015 we did have a lot more mathematical thinking, but actually I think that was too much for candidates and actually put people off maths, which we obviously don't want to do. So I'm not sure the answer is to rush and change the assessments in any way. And also, I don't think that's something that class teachers, so most of us here are class teachers, it's not something that we can influence. So I was looking to finish with something we can influence. So, right, assessment, done. Right. Yeah, only to say that, yeah, it certainly does require more thinking. There is some content that there would be in higher maths. So they do have some, it is some of the geometry, actually. It's some of the circle and functions and transformation of functions that's in the GCSE that would be in our higher maths. So going on to curriculum, again, I got this phrase broadly similar. And I've heard that several times. I think obviously we have in Scotland, the CFE has a focus on experience and outcomes. And latterly we've had the benchmarks for the last 5, 6, 7 years. In England, there is some people would say there's focus on knowledge, and it's perhaps more prescriptive, the national curriculum. Let's have a look. So this is just comparing one aspect of our curriculum. So just looking at fractions at second level. Now this would be fleshed out into a progression framework or a scheme of work through moderation. But these were the starting. Well, the E's and O's are the starting point. The benchmarks are maybe the end point. And one of the reasons I love the curriculum for excellence is the way that it relates to a tweet that Lee Gray posted the other day about, I think it was from the ATM, the power to learn rests with the learner, and the teacher has a subordinate role. And I think that's emphasized in the E's and O's. You've got, I have investigated in 2 of these. I can show the equivalent forms of simple fractions. And it's very much learner focused. If you look at the national curriculum, it's about what pupils should be taught, but there is more detail. Some people would say it was maybe a little bit too prescriptive. Perhaps, I think there was a comment this morning about it leading to de-skilling of the math teacher. I might have picked that up wrong, but I kind of have heard that before. I wonder if some of this, and I certainly think progression frameworks and schemes of work can be a distillation of the best practice and something good to build on. So there is something I like about this. the issue I have with our curriculum is that some of the progression frameworks and schemes of work, well, the quality can certainly be inconsistent. I think that would be fair to say. So what does that lead to in terms of instruction? And again, this is just my opinion. I'd be quite happy to be challenged on a lot of this. This is just, and I'd also think, I'm not sure that all of the people I interviewed would completely agree with what I'm saying. This is just my distillation of this. But anyway, so in England, I would say it's perhaps more prescriptive. There's pros and cons to that. I think a lot of us in Scotland like the flexibility to be able to teach how we like to teach and to be able to adapt our teaching to the learners that are in front of us. I do worry, and I have heard it said, that we perhaps have a bit of an over-reliance on textbooks, although I'm posting here pictures of 3 textbooks that I feel that I have used well. By, I especially, a lot of learners like the security of a textbook, and they like to be able to practice and self-assess with the answers at the back. And there's lots of good questions in, I would say there's lots of good questions, all 3 of those textbooks, lots of exercises I think I've used effectively. However, something that somebody said to me was that the Malcolm Swan Standards Unit, Improving Learning in Mathematics, in England, that was maybe the Bible for secondary maths department. And that is some work that was done by Malcolm Swan to look at how we can help learners to make connections. And Fiona referred to that in her keynote this morning. And I think that's then gone on to look. Sorry. I'm going to take a drink of water there. I'm talking too fast. And then I started about this time last year. I was looking at the work of the NCETM and the Maths Hubs and their 5 big ideas, and I thought, wow, that's really high quality in terms of describing what we should have in our toolkit as teachers. I thought that was really rich, and when I looked at when I looked at Tom Manner's videos and each one of those 5 big ideas, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So the other thing looking at the differences in professional culture, and I thought, well, can I do a flowchart of how math teachers are supported in delivering better teaching and learning? And so this is what I came up with. So class teachers in Scotland, we do have the curriculum for excellence, but we also have SQA resources. We are, the secondary schools, we have that to aim for. We have some very decent textbooks. We have some great online resources. I'll come to those in a minute. And some, there's been a lot of work, I think, through the local authorities, through the regional collaboratives, and some external learning providers like LaSalle, in improving our expertise in representation and structure, in concrete and pictorial abstract. And Education in Scotland are obviously through all of that. So then compare that with class teaching in England. It's very similar. I mean, this is just a snapshot. They've now got the hubs, class hub, the maths hubs supporting them. They've got exam boards, textbooks, online resources, the same learning providers, but they've also got the NCETM, and that's supported by Cambridge University, Nottingham University, and the research institutes there, Loughborough University, in providing really high quality, well-researched resources, well funded by the Department for Education. So it seems that that's maybe a resource that we could maybe be latching onto, was what I was thinking in the last few weeks. And then more so when I spoke to Fiona and saw the keynote this morning. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say about that. So my next part of the discussion. What am I like for time? I'm doing fine for time, I think. So what action can we take as classroom teachers? I wanted to end with this because I feel as if some of these fundamentals are out with our control, but in terms of the instruction in our class, we can influence that on an individual or a departmental or a faculty level. So thinking about how we instruct pupils in thinking mathematically and developing a relational understanding of maths, which is, I think, some of the work that Malcolm Swan and the NCTM has been doing over the last decade or so, 2 decades perhaps, in England, that might have been what's had an impact on the improvements they've had in PISA. And I think what we need to do more of is more of what we're doing here and collaborate. I mean, I think that's where I have the most fun, and I really feel that I get the most out of that I can translate into the classroom. But I'm going to be a bit more specific, and I think we need to build expertise in supporting children in mastering maths. I'll talk about that in a minute. And also, and that's in line with, very much in line with the recommendations from the Making Maths Count report. But also, I think it's important is to engage with some inspiring tasks. And this is partly because of the 4 fundamentals that Chris McGrain talked about. He says, I think he's right, is that the 5th fundamental is the tasks. I think he might be right about that. And I think it's certainly a great way to engage with one another and with pupils to improve the way we instruct pupils. So let's look at that a bit more. So so the first thing, we know that, Fiona, we were a bit disappointed because you cut out just at the end. So I had a go at finishing your sentence from your keynote. Is teaching for mastery just good teaching? Well, it's more, yes, it's good teaching, but then you cut out, you see. So I said, well, maybe you were going to say it's a distillation of how good teachers teach and facilitate tasks that develop in our pupils learning that's deep and durable. Now, I have no idea what Fiona was going to say, but I had a go at that because I think that a lot of that is exemplified in these 5 big ideas. And last summer, Tom Manners, there's been so much great CPD online, hasn't there? And Tom Manners gave some hour-long webinars on each one of those. So I went to those and I looked first, well, he did them in the opposite way than I might have done. So looking at representation and structure first, this is something I think we're getting so much better at in this country. I feel so much more confident using concrete and pictorial now than I did, 8 years ago, something like that, when we started. Maybe it wasn't that long ago. And ended up feeling able to be in a position last year where I could write about that and write about how the method allows us to work with the arithmetic of multiplication as well as the algebraic, and using concrete materials in the class for integers and for algebra. Fluency, I didn't understand, I think, a few years ago how important it was because I was never really fluent in my times tables, although I always had a method for it, how important that was in terms of freeing up working memory to think about other aspects of mathematics. And also what I really enjoyed over the last few years is number talks that talk about this issue about, well, strategies that are efficient as well as accurate and flexible strategies. I've really enjoyed the number talks I've been involved in and the work on number talks that I did in Renfrew. Mathematical thinking. Wouldn't it be wonderful if our children came out able to experiment and pattern sniff and tinker and conjecture and describe and guess and all of these things that we would like our pupils to be? And I think that's about engaging with tasks that elicit that kind of thinking and good questioning and prompts around that. Variation. This is the one I'm least confident in. I've done some thinking about intelligent practice, and I've used some of the some intelligent practice activities from Chris McGrane's site and Craig Barton's. So Tom Manners talks a lot about that, and you can see that there is throughout all of this at the bottom bullet on here is about making connections, and throughout the 5 big ideas is this idea of coherence, about taking small steps, about sequencing things correctly, and I mean, I think the grid method is a great example of that. How we can go from multiplying numbers through algebra right through to doing synthetic division with classes. And this year, in my 3rd year class at Bearsden, because I'd been multiplying out brackets using the grid method, they were able to factorize a cubic using a grid method. And, you know, do we need the synthetic division? It'd be lovely to be able to have that all connected up. Inspiring tasks. A lot today's been about inspiring tasks, and I was trying to think, well, how do I choose which ones to talk about? There's so many I could talk about. I thought I'd just grab some pages from Twitter. And this is a bit about collaboration as well, because this was at the Maths West conference. Lovely task from Open Middle. There's so many great activities on MathSpot. I use these in November and December, perhaps even October. I was using one of these a week with my S2 and S1 class, and it's a lovely wee test. From Johnny, it's not Johnny English or Johnny Rotten. Johnny somebody's MathSpot website, one of the from the now working for LaSalle part-time, I think. I really love a percentage trail. My class, and the discussion we get afterwards about the strategies is fantastic in terms of sharing understanding between children. Right, Enrich. I did this class with my S2, I think in December. There's 2 on here. I didn't realize there were 2 on here about the pattern in the triples. I don't know about the pupils. I really enjoyed that, and I discussed it. There's so many triples on my boards, and I was ushering colleagues in to look at it. So it was a lovely pattern in the primes that elicits. And this was actually a reason I remember. The reason I included this was because the Enrich got us to do this last summer, and I got involved in that activity at the time. Some lovely activities on the Enrich site. So I think there's 2 intelligent practice I wrote this down: sequences of questions which enable students to gain practice in carrying out a mathematical method whilst at the same time providing opportunities to think mathematically. And I've used both of these tasks from Craig Barton's website to good effect, I think. And of course, we've got our very own Chris Smith. So during lockdown, Emily and I engaging in some of the maths conundrums. There's Chris with a better haircut. And I my first year really enjoyed this activity. You talked about this at the West Conference a year or 2 ago, but that's also on his test site, along with, of course, the what we call them. It's too late in the day, but he changed them into an escape room. The activities where you go back and forth. I should have a picture of one of these. The relay races that he does. So he's got a Christmas one, and I use that as a escape room, and they're great fun. Great for getting children to, especially if they're working together to discuss mathematics. I could go on. I could just go on about all the tasks we've got. I've not mentioned Chris McGrange's website, or I've not mentioned the YouTube low floor, high ceiling tasks. But I think that's really important that we do keep collaborating, but particularly in these two areas of looking at the 5 big ideas of teaching for mastery, and just encouraging people to enjoying doing maths tasks with colleagues, pupils, parents, and as you can see from the photos, sometimes my kids are lucky and they get to do it with me, do some math tasks with me as well. So that's me. Any questions?
Simon, I don't know if you want to have a look at the chat now. Just you'll probably see a lot of there's lots of comments and lots of discussion about textbooks as well, which I think is an interesting chat.
Well, what's particularly piqued your interest?
I don't really want to influence it when I work at Education Scotland.
There was a bit of a debate whether textbooks managed to get the balance right between basic practice, like you were talking about, that reassurance and confidence building that learners get, but also providing enough challenge to just maybe put them in that slightly useful, uncomfortable spot where they're having to push the knowledge. So there was a bit of debate about that earlier on in the chat.
Iona, for me, it was somebody said it's about how the teacher uses the textbook, and that's the comment that resonated best with me, because I think you can give teachers all the great resources in the world, but if they haven't got the pedagogy right, then it's not going to work. And I think it's all about understanding the curriculum and using it effectively to enhance that learning and teaching.
I think I knew that would offend some people. I don't mean to offend. I used a lot of textbooks, but obviously in the right hands, teach textbooks can be very effective. We talked about that last week, I think, Fiona.
Yeah. Joe's posted a link there to Chris's site, so teaching resources there on TES.
Somebody's still saying they use Malcolm Swan with their classes. Yeah, I think that's such a great resource. Somebody I know was saying that they they always give that to probationers and students when they come in, because it is a great resource.
There's so much chats, just trying to find a way through it. There's a good point there from Joe about trying to get age-appropriate material for learners in BG who aren't working at that sort of expected stage. So supporting learners who are maybe struggling a bit with their maths and trying to get them age-appropriate resources.
The comment I'm coming to as well is from Kathy about parents saying they can't do or hate maths, and how our responses are key to that as well. And I would totally agree with that. The amount I've seen over Facebook and Twitter over the last year, it just has showed me how underconfident parents are. And I mean, I had a feeling about that before anyway, but even my own sets of friends, saying, oh, I'm rubbish at maths and things like that. And I've been really trying hard to get them to change that, because it will just keep going generation upon generation. And I think we've got a big job to do in shifting that mindset of parents.
Yeah, I did some parental workshops in Stirling, like for a year group when I was in university. Development also for the Stirling learning community, and you do get people that say I'm no good at maths, and we do definitely need to change that culture. I'm finding it hard to read the chat because people are adding to it. It goes up. Somebody saying they love open middle tasks. Oh, that was you, Iona.
Yeah, love them. Just love them. That's an interesting comment from Alan. Age appropriate or performance appropriate?
Yeah. Somebody's saying, yeah, Michael and I worked with Chris to create OneNote and Google Form style escape rooms. Yeah, they were great. Somebody's saying, are there plans to collaborate with English maths colleagues? Iona?
Well, there are conversations between the different, the Scottish Maths Council sits on the joint Maths Council with the other Maths Councils across Britain, and I know that our curriculum teams, it's not just a maths thing, obviously, it's curriculum generally, and I know the curriculum teams in Education Scotland do speak with the curriculum teams. For example, in Wales, there's a lot of curricular development going on in Wales just now as well, and there's sort of quite a lot of similarities between the two curriculums as well. So there are ongoing conversations between teachers and the supporting organisations, and there's certainly nothing to stop these conversations happening. I know Fiona has certainly come up and done a lot of workshops up here as well, so it's great to share these ideas, and certainly no there isn't a barrier to that, I don't know about this question. Would you say that England has taken to the mastery overall? Is that something that you?
Is Fiona Allen still
conversations?
If Fiona Allen was seemed to be saying this morning that a large percentage of schools were involved in the mastery approach, more in primary. I thought it was more than 50% in primary and about 25% in secondary that were involved in the maths hubs. I might have got that wrong from the plenary this morning.
Yeah, Fiona's not on the call anymore, unfortunately. So.
Oh, drat. We'll ask her, Mr. Geddes. I will get back to you.
I'm aware.
A joint UK Maths conference.
Well, again, there are the professional organisations, the Association of Teachers of Maths, Mathematical Association, that they do have conferences. I mean, in previous years, they've had conferences within Scotland, and virtual conferences are obviously these conferences are now virtual, and there's certainly a lot to be learned from these British associations as well. So I think they're just to be recommended to learn from. To learn from wherever there's good ideas out there, and as you say, we don't talk against each other, not really.
No. So I was just looking, there's a comment from Robert who says, I think some schools in England have been moving away from mastery. I wonder where that information comes from. I'd be interested to hear why schools might have done. We might get an answer for Robert in the next few minutes, but we might not, Iona.
I'm just aware of the time.
Unmuted him in case you want to speak. Sorry, Iona. I'll put the evaluation up as well. There's a wee bit of chat there. If you could put the.
I'm just going to pop the link into this is a general evaluation over the whole day, and we're very grateful. SMC would obviously be very grateful if everybody could fill out an evaluation of the day. I know it's been great hosting the rooms and hearing a real variety of workshops that have been going on. So if before you finish up the day, you would take a few moments just to complete the evaluation, we'd be very grateful for that. And
is that up, Iona? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see that now.
Great. So you can just scan that from your phone, or you can click on the link that Iona is going to stick in the chat.
It's in the chat now. Yeah, right. Robert's just come back saying some schools found mastery didn't work for them as it didn't suit the culture.
I wonder which schools. Sounds interesting. Well, thank you everybody for coming to my presentation.
Yep, thanks everyone for coming along, and warm thanks to you for coming and giving up your Saturday. I hope you've enjoyed your day. Thanks to Simon for a really interesting talk this afternoon. Graveyard shift's always a challenge, but I think you kept everybody's interest brilliantly. So please do fill out the evaluation and go and enjoy a well-deserved evening away from the screens. And thanks once again for giving up your day and coming along today.